Welcome to the Feel Alive at Work online retreat. I'm Karen Hoffman of A Work Life You Love. I'm the host of the retreat, and I'm a coach specializing in helping people create work lives that are both fulfilling and personally sustainable. In this session, I'm speaking with Tessa Lynne Alburn. I'm so glad Tessa is part of this retreat because she is very wise and she is very good at helping people reconnect with themselves, with their souls, as she will explain, and then helping them to live their lives in a way that says yes to their soul. Tessa's wisdom can be really helpful for people who are not happy in their work, because I think people in that situation have said no to their soul and it's not working anymore. And Tessa brings help. I want to tell you a little bit about her background and her current work. She's a soul connection guide, author, podcast host, and explorer. She's a certified work coach, facilitator, trainer, Reiki master, energy specialist, and creatrix of the Soul Light Healing Method. Tessa's mission is to support spiritually inclined women in living an ideal life by becoming excellent through a system of reigniting their soul, expanding their capacity, raising their energy to the highest vibration. Women come to know the deep pleasure of giving back to the world in wondrous and meaningful ways while improving their current life experience at work, at home, and in all their relationships. They learn to experience new ways of receiving information and energy from the universe without medicine. Tessa, thank you for being here.
You're very welcome. I'm delighted to be here.
I want to give you a very warm welcome, and I want to ask you. I had mentioned this work that you do that helps women connect to their soul, and I understand that to mean that you help women tune into what they want, what they care about, what they need, and you call this connecting with your soul or saying yes to your soul. So I'd like to start by asking you to tell us what that means.
Connecting to your soul is, this is something just so dear to me. I think it's something I became aware of when I was very young, that there had to be something deeper going on than what was happening in the world and in my life, in my household, and at school, all those things. And I think there's a lot of talk about connecting to one's soul, but there's a lot of top level response as to what that means. And I am going to say, yes, it does need all those things that you just mentioned. Means women need to listen to what they want, to what they need. They also really need to understand what has meaning for them, and then go deeper than that, to listen deeply to the whisper voice within that has greater wisdom and is without ego. Right? So there's wisdom there, there's no ego, and then what this allows us to do when we're connecting with that part of us, which I believe is the soul, we can then go into transcendent values. We can then come to really understand what we're willing to take a stand for in the world, and how we choose to be while doing it. Right? So we're not at the whim of the things around us, that we have a clear path forward, that we know when we're being in connection with our soul, we can't make bad choices. They just don't exist. Is that making sense?
It makes a lot of sense.
Great.
First, the tuning in to your wisdom, letting go of ego, and arriving at what you care about, what transcendent values you call it, what you're willing to take a stand for, and how you want to be. That's beautiful. I love that. I wonder if you could tell us about your relationship to this topic of connecting with your soul.
I probably can. You might need to like hold me back if I get too involved in my storytelling. I went through some hard times as a young girl, and I found myself soothing myself by reading mythology and looking for deeper answers to what was going on. I was very interested in the nature of things, the psychology of things, the hero's journey, and magic, because I almost had to believe that there would be magic in the world. Otherwise, what was I doing there? Why was it so hard? And as I grew up, continuing to nourish myself with this, and then looking to astrology, for help from the stars, understanding and feeling. I felt a connection. I knew there was some kind of connection with the cosmos, with the stars. And it wasn't until years later that I also realized a very important connection was with my power animals, my spiritual team, if you were. And I have said this on a number of platforms. There's a little, and so I won't give a lot of detail around this, but when I was young, I had a profound dream that helped me connect with the animals. And I just thought it was a dream at the time, but I learned later on, I understood what it really was. It was a divine connection to my spiritual team. And so I found myself later in life struggling with drinking, depression, and then I managed to get over that. And then I kept going, and I was succeeding, and I was in the world, and had several careers that I'm very proud about. I was working as a legal assistant. I had graduated with a degree in music, and excuse me. I graduated with an undergraduate in music performance, and I had gone on a pursuit of starlight, in the footlights. And where this all took me was back to myself. I found myself in the big city in New York, in Big Apple, very traumatized, just literally from life, but also carrying the baggage of my trauma from my early years and not understanding that that's what it was. I didn't have the cognitive recognition of that yet. And I also had the gift, the blessing of being able to find spiritual teachers. And I started to connect with divine wisdom when I gave up the so-called rules about religious beliefs and following, a prescribed Christian system, which is how I was raised, as my mother was a choir director. And so I began going to places like the Unity Center and listening to Eric Butterworth and Olga Butterworth and tuning in to the transcendent teachings that were available, the spiritual wisdom that was there without the dogma. And this set me on another entire course. But how I knew I wasn't fully connecting with my soul was I started to realize that I was upset a lot. I was getting either over triggered from having past trauma, or I was in situations where I felt like a victim, and I either became sad and like helpless, and just kind of gave in to the situation, and I did whatever was asked of me in those work situations and in life situations, even with friendships. But when I started to notice, I started to feel more and more angry. And, you could call it frustrated at first, right? Like I developed like a sarcastic sense of humor for a while. And I was like, it's not me. What's really going on? And so I knew that I needed to do something more and really look deeper, do some more work around that to find out, why was I starting to sound like mom?
Mm.
Right? That was a big piece. And nothing against my mom. I love my mom, and she's in the spirit dimension now. But growing up as her daughter gave me a lot of lessons. And when I saw myself adopting her behaviors, I knew that that wasn't me and that there had to be something more. And I fell into like making deals with God. At the time, I was still in a kind of a paradigm of there is a God that sort of has authority over us. And so I would make deals with God, and then I would, say, this has to get better, or else, maybe I'll check out of here, or I'm just never going to do this again. And I was like, what is going on? Like, I need support, and I wasn't getting it in the way that I needed it. And so I went on a journey to learn how I could get support, how I could feel supported for who I was. Not just, basic needs support, but Tessa, like I wanted to show up as me and not be judged for that. And so there were several, peaks and valleys there, and I kept going on my journey and still do, every now and then there's something that shows up in life and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Why am I reacting that way? And so I know that there's a deeper lesson for me. So everything that's happened is all about, what can I learn from this and how can I grow from this, and coming into greater acceptance. So I'll pause there to see if you have any questions or.
Sure. Well, it's fascinating to hear that as a child, that you know, like a lot of children don't really know about mythology or the hero's journey or magic, magic maybe. But how great that you had those resources available to you. And then I suppose as you grew up, you learned about astrology, and then I just hear that we all have different distresses in our lives of different levels in childhood, later on in life. And it's just great to hear about your experience of disconnection, feeling angry, feeling frustrated, the other difficult emotions you experience, and then the seeking ways to connect to your soul and to grow and learn from your experiences, and yeah, to grow and learn from those experiences and keep paying attention, keep connecting. It's really wonderful to hear about.
Thank you. I think there can be a shift in how we approach things that can really help us, which is, instead of judging ourselves for, why am I like that? Don't do that. You're bad, and bringing back all the old programming to sort of get ourselves in line with whatever we think we're supposed to be doing. And if we can just be in a place of, oh, that's interesting, what is really going on? Is there something that I need? And this is where women tend to fall short. They tend not to ask, what is it they really need? I think they're working with, so many women over the years, hundreds of women over the years, on a one-to-one basis. It's pretty much the same. They're afraid that when they ask those questions, when they look beneath the surface, that they're going to fall apart. They're going to unravel in some way. Maybe they'll, to one person it might be, oh, I'll start crying and I won't be able to stop. And for others, it's like, oh no, if I look, then I'm going to destroy the life that I have, and I don't want to do that to my kids, my husband, whatever it is. And so they tend to come back into a box that's made up of old programming and missing needs. And so to start connecting with one's soul, that could be a step right there. Is just to start asking the question, what is it that I might need here? And often the answer may be connected to the sense of being seen or heard. And so then we ask the next question. How do I do that? How could I be seen more? How could I be heard? And then start taking steps in those directions.
Well, and frequently, if we're talking about work, which we are in this retreat, frequently we're thinking about, okay, what do I have to do to succeed? How do I have to be to succeed? And this is all pretty subconscious. And there's not a lot of space for what you're talking about of how am I in the world? What do I need? How would I like this to be? So the suggestion to start paying attention is good. And on the one hand, it's small, but on the other hand, it's not small at all.
It's not small at all. And people think, oh, if I ask that at work, then that's going to be a problem. Nobody's going to like it. It's going to be hard. It's going to be pushback or this, that, or the other. And trust me, I know, because I went through that. And sometimes it is a little bit hard to get your need met at an office or in a work situation or with colleagues. But we can always give ourselves what we need. We just have to be willing to really look at what that is, and rather than try and gloss over it, take some time and be in care with it. Because we can't expect people around us to just be going around giving us what we need. That doesn't work either. So we can come into a level of mastery by choosing what we're going to do to support ourselves. So we start to make decisions and choices and make conscious choices rather than feeling we're a victim to our work or to our hours. And, I know there are a lot of people out there working some pretty crazy hours. And there's always an excuse. There's an excuse. Usually there's a justification that the company needs it or the company's putting all this pressure on them. But there's also is a collusion in the individual. And I think that's the first place it needs to be addressed. Taking ownership of what you can take ownership of and taking care of your inner world and staying connected with your soul.
I think that's wonderful advice. Yeah, what part can I do something about? How can I take care of myself? Yeah. So you've already given us some ideas about how to start, which is to start paying attention to what you want, what you need. Is there more that you could say about, could you give us a short teaching on how to connect with your soul?
I would love to do that, actually. There are so many ways, like when I think about that question, like there's so many things that come to mind. And I was actually reflecting on this before we started Whoops, sorry about that. I was thinking about that before we started this interview today. And I thought, well, what is it? What would I like to share if I'm going to do a teaching? And this is very subtle and can be very, very powerful. And so you just take a few moments, and a lot of people do like to put their hand over their heart, but you don't have to. I actually prefer something like this or a mudra with my hands. Close your eyes and you start to talk with your soul. Hey there, soul. Wow, I'm not even sure I've been listening to you. I don't even know if I know what you sound like. But you know what? I want to. I want to connect with you. And I want to learn from you. And know that you're with me in this life. And so, soul, I have one request right now. I ask you to help me feel your love. Send me love. And then just wait. And be in the openness of receiving to receive the love of your soul. Okay, so that might take somebody a few minutes to feel any subtle connection with their soul. And for me, it happens pretty quickly. I now know what love feels like from my soul. And so pay attention to just the subtle energy, like maybe you just feel a little bit lighter or a little bit more relieved or held or warm. And just pay attention. And then when you're done, you say, thank you for that. Thank you, soul. I look forward to getting to know you more. That's it.
That's beautiful. And it took us what, a couple of minutes. You can spend longer if you want. And it's just sort of an acknowledging of something you might not have been paying much attention to or any attention to, acknowledging and calling to and being in connection with.
Yes.
And it can really have an impact. It had an impact on me just as I did it together with you.
Just in those few moments. Exactly. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I
So-
do want to say, not for people not to have an expectation that it's going to happen quickly. It might,
Right.
right? But
Yeah,
if,
it all
if
depends.
it's,
We're all different. And
yes.
go on, you were going to say something more about that?
Well, and some people have been maybe cultivating some aspect of being with their soul, and if somebody's been feeling really cut off or hurt by their soul or feeling abandoned, like that might take a little bit longer, and that's okay. Yeah.
So just try it again a little bit later and the
Yep.
next day.
Once a day.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for that. That was a beautiful teaching.
You're welcome. I wanted to talk about a couple of ways, or one very specific way that people disconnect from their soul. Is this a good time to
Yeah, that would be
talk
great.
about that?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So one of the reasons that especially women disconnect from their soul is because they have gotten into a place of what I call being out of right responsibility. And that's not a judgment, but it means they're out of alignment with their own soul's responsibility. And what this can look like is it can look like over obligation, right? We're saying yes a lot to people. or saying no almost never. Maybe you're taking on too much, right? You're just like, I've got to do that, or you're saying to yourself, I've got to do it for someone. You're probably not in right responsibility. You're not in alignment. One of the areas where I see people, I think this is a good example, whether or not you are a mom, when moms are doing stuff for their kids and they get into this really over involved emotionally in the child's soul fare, it's because they're scared for them, right? They want to help their child, make it through the world and do this and be that and all that stuff. And they really care and they want to protect them, but they go in too far. And I want to tell all the moms out there that you are not actually responsible for the soul of your child. And to all the women out there, nor are you responsible for your parents' souls. You are not responsible for anyone else's soul but your own. And with parents, of course, there's good parenting, right? You do want to be in good parenting, but you don't want to impose your soul energy onto your children because they came in with a soul. And if you nurture them as beings, whole beings, then they can also take care of their own soul. They will know what's right inside of them. So go ahead and take care of their basic needs, teach them some morality, those things, but let go when it comes to their deeper callings, their deeper knowings. I just need to pause there for a second. One of the concepts around this is that we want to maintain our own energetic field and let others maintain theirs. And so we want to be responsible for our stuff and let go of what is not ours, because we are all divine beings. And I was talking earlier about when we connect with our soul that there's no ego. Well, that's because soul is divine. And you're also not beholden to a divine entity that's greater than you, because you are equally divine. And you want to be clear and mindful about your choices and your responsibility in being divine, because you are a co-creator. You are a creator, and you co-create here on this earth with others. So being in right responsibility is about being in ownership and about honoring the divinity within you. When you start to honor that, you will also have far greater connection with your soul. You'll start to feel it more. You'll start to hear your soul speak to you, guide you gently. Not that way, this way. Not that, this. Right? So we have to become still. We have to become good listeners so we can discern the difference of what is soul and what is something else.
Can I ask you a couple questions about that?
Absolutely.
So I wonder if you could tell us what it looks like to be outside of right responsibility in relation to children or parents. Like, give us a concrete, like.
Yeah. When let's say a child is 18 and they're starting to go to college, and they have a sense of what they want to do or be, but they're not being listened to. They're not being taken seriously. And the parents start to railroad them into something else. That is control. So when it feels like control, if you're controlling your children, you probably are, and you're not in sole responsibility. Instead, what you want to do is get clear on what it is that is calling to you and find a way to express that and be open to hearing what your teenager is also feeling inside themselves.
Does that apply with much younger children?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, younger children will need to learn boundaries. That can also be done from this place that I'm talking about. Children need to be, could be spoken to as knowing beings. Yes, they're here and they're learning, they're young still and they're learning the game of life. But that doesn't mean that their inner world is wrong. And if their inner inside is telling them, but I want to be friends with that person, and you're saying I shouldn't, then there's a discussion to be had to explore that and to see what's really going on. Because there might be a need that the child has, and it might not be a soul calling, but it might be a need that's not getting met. So this is the beginning of the conversation, is just to have respect for their spirit, their guiding spirit, and their soul, and to teach them about what does work in life and what keeps you safe, and what, why there are rules for some things, and other things you can work with a rule while still being authentic. So I think there's a calling for parents to start parenting authenticity a little bit better. And I think also, let's bring this to the workplace. In the workplace, first of all, I really discourage anyone from staying in a job that you're only doing because of the money. If that's the only reason, I think it's time to start looking at how could I make this job more connected for me? How could I bring more value, my authentic value to it? And if there's no space for that, after you've done a thorough investigation and inquiry around that, then it is time to move on. If you feel under the obligation, like you've got family obligations or whatever it is that you tell yourself is keeping you there, then again, that's another inquiry, but not to just dismiss things out of hand. And when you find the values inside yourself I'm sorry, I'm like catching myself. If this is like too far, pull me back, or we'll dive into a little bit more. But when you find your own values, when you're clear on your values and how you can bring value and meaning to the job that you do for the greater good of the company that you work for, then you can bring your authentic self. You can be authentic, and even if the company isn't quite ready for that, you can still be in your authenticity. You can be in mastery of your situation by accepting what you have come to do, why you took the job, accepting all that you've done in the past to get you where you are, and accepting that the company is how they are, and still find your way through it from a place of authenticity. And you can only do that by asking good questions and by connecting within and not pointing fingers. So this is about being responsible, taking ownership, and being accountable to yourself
Yeah,
with kindness.
this word responsibility is present in both of the kinds of examples you've been giving, one about relationships with children or other family members. And you're talking about over responsibility where, or being out of right responsibility. And your suggestion is to see, where is that line between helping your child in a way that's helpful, and where are you sort of overriding what is their soul or their energy? And in the workplace example, once again, it's responsibility to your own authenticity. And in both cases, to be really looking for where you're being overly responsible so that you can reclaim your energy for yourself. Do I understand that?
Yes, absolutely. That's right. So when we take care of our soul and when we're being responsible for us first, then it's easier to make smart decisions that then free up our energy. And magic happens that at that point. So when we free up our energy and we're not in like slave mind or, control brain or, oh, helpless victim, nobody wants to think of themselves as a victim, but I'm telling you, there's like 95% of the people out there that are, or they're fighting it. I'm not a victim, right? But that's the same thing. It's just the other side of the coin. What we want to do is come to being responsible for our choices from a really deep level and our connection to our own divinity. If I'm divine, how might I behave instead? What might I ask for instead? And what would work in this situation? What's something I could do? Okay, well, pretty sure that's not going to work. Let's see, that might not work. That might not work. That might get me fired. Okay. Oh, but there's this other one I hadn't even considered.
Mhm.
Oh, I can protect my energy that way.
Mhm.
Okay. That's what it is right now. Let me dance there and see what happens. And I can tell you that things change. When we do this, the outer world changes around us. Suddenly, well, it seems like suddenly, it's probably not suddenly. It seems like suddenly that others will be like wanting to know more about you. What's going on with you? Wow, the work you're doing is amazing. You maybe didn't do a thing that's different.
Mhm.
You did it in here. And the energy is helping you flow through your work life, flow through your relationships, helping you show up more vulnerably while being responsible. So when I say vulnerably, I mean really authentically.
Mhm.
And we do need to learn things like how to communicate well and how much not to say. Because in the workplace, most people want to say way too much and it doesn't work. So we have to find, oh, what does it mean to be able to communicate and have it be just enough
Mhm.
so that I know I've been heard and they understand what we're talking about and we can come to a new level of understanding.
Um, I'm loving this discussion and what you're offering and explaining. And shortly we'll need to wrap up, but I want to ask you a question about this, which is most of this is going on, this being overly responsible, doing too much, it's going on without our awareness. And so it seems like what you're suggesting is a process of becoming more aware and cultivating awareness. And it's reminding me of the practice you gave us earlier of speaking to the soul, connecting with the soul. Can you speak to that at all?
Yes, so sorry, Karen. I just lost my thought. And I had something that I wanted to share.
Yeah. I was asking you about, that this is mainly outside of awareness.
Oh, thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what the trigger that I needed. So, so many ideas flooding in. So awareness is something we can practice. And it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to suddenly start making different choices, but you start to become aware of what you're doing as a knee-jerk reaction when people ask something of you or put something on you or assume something about you. And so you want to just take a moment and notice what you're feeling in your body, because usually if it's any of those things, we have some kind of visceral response. There's like, ugh, it didn't feel good, or oh, okay, and then we can immediately talk ourselves into it because, okay, of course, I'll do that because we rationalize. So I want you to start paying attention to what happens in the moment that somebody comes to you with a problem, with a question, with a demand, with a need, with a, I need your time. Just, I need your time right now. Well, okay, well, give me just a moment. Yes, how can I support you right now? So, and I think also putting it in that framework, how could I support you right now, takes it off of us. There's an energetic there in those words. Not what can I do for you? How can I help you? No. It's, how could I support you? And that helps me stay a little more sovereign. And I can have an awareness of what I'm noticing while they're in their stuff, whatever their stuff is. Sometimes I think of it like choosing to look at their spirit, right? We're just like somewhere here, like not looking at the little person, the little me that's running around upset or whatever they're, worried, but looking at like the soul or the spirit behind that is wanting this person to learn something. And so they're on a divine journey also. I could say, how could I support you with that? Take a breath and notice what you're feeling. And if they're like, I need you to, do, take another breath. Notice what you're feeling. And if you can, make a choice. If it's not like, your superior is saying, I need you to do this by noon, that's it, and walks out the room, like you don't have a lot of leeway there. But most bosses that I've ever encountered usually hang around a little bit longer, or there's an extended conversation and we can say, noon. I'll tell you what, I've got some other priorities that I'm cranking out and I could get to it by 12:30. Would that work? So we need to find our voice and really pay attention to what's going on rather than just jump in. Yes, of course I'll do that. And then, what am I doing? And then we get into a cycle of beating up on ourselves and then we bolster ourselves. See, this is where the payout is, to be over obligated. When we're over obligated and we get into that cycle and we say yes and yes and yes, we then get to say, oh, I'm such a good person because look at how hard I'm working. I'm putting everybody's needs before mine. Aren't I a martyr? Aren't I a good one? So rather than do that, because that's just going to suck your energy, you're going to wind up in a place in your life, you're going to be wishing you'd stopped that years earlier. Just start breathing and recognizing what's happening in that moment, and ask yourself, could I ask for a little leeway, or could I just support them and without getting overly involved? Let's see, let's try it.
Can I make a space for myself here?
Yes, exactly. And so this is a lot of the work that I do with people. I've worked with 7-figure CEOs and 6-figure entrepreneurs and women who have been in bad marriages and good marriages, and some people, it's just across the board. Everybody needs to pause in that moment and then learn how to then create something different. And so the conversation may be slightly different given the circumstances, but the pause is always there. And the self-ownership needs to be there first, or there can't be a new conversation. We just create the old entanglements.
Tessa, you've been super generous with your time and your teaching. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. It's really helpful and valuable. I understand that you also have a gift that you'd like to offer our audience. Would you like to tell us about it?
Sure, I have a soul connection roadmap to becoming excellent and reigniting your soul fire. And this will help you to be living from your true self. So there are several steps in it. It's a quick read. It is essentially the new energy calling you in to what's possible. And so if you're resonating with this, I invite you to check it out.
I would second that idea. I would encourage everybody to take advantage of or take the opportunity to receive this gift. It's extremely valuable, and I encourage you all to go get your copy.
Thank you, Karen.
To close our conversation, I want to ask you if you think that there's one quality or value that's the most important in order to connect with your soul and live in a way that's connected to your soul.
Yes. The one most important value, I believe, at this time in my own journey, is truth. Truth with yourself. Truth with what you're feeling, thinking, wanting, needing. And truth, the truth also of your divine being. All those things coexist.
Beautiful. Tessa, I'm so grateful for your sharing your knowledge and experience with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. It was a delight to be here. Many blessings.
And thank you to everyone for tuning in.